a lot of times we get asked about like logic modeling and how we're putting that together. And I'm going to put a plug in, get your cameras ready. There will be another QR code probably in like 20 minutes. But it's for a study that we're doing on how people have been applying implementation research logic models. So just be ready for that. So what I wanted to do here was now walk you through the project in kind of our planning approach, but also a way for us to be able to describe what we're doing. And so one of the things that we said early on is that even though our study is all about reach, there's a lot of things that we did in our previous studies to get communities ready to deliver the program, to adopt the program, to implement it with quality, and then hopefully sustain it. So there's other things that we need to do, but let's just start with reach. And we always start with kind of the end point here. And so for this one, reach here, what we're looking at is, as I've described before, number, proportion, representativeness of people from those electronic health records that we identify as eligible families that end up enrolling in building healthy families. Okay. And so our context here is that we've found over a number of different community implementations that there's in any given community, they have a really hard time finding a sustainable process to identify and enroll eligible participants. And as you can expect, like word of mouth, we've found in one of our early studies was a very effective way to get information out on physical activity programming in rural areas. It's not quite the same for childhood obesity programs because there's a little bit different perspective on that, and you run into a little bit more stigma and those types of things. So it doesn't quite work. The word of mouth doesn't work quite as well. Not that it doesn't work at all. And so we designed, so this is how we think about it. We designed a population health management automated text message outreach approach. And we propose that the mechanisms through which it would work is it increases awareness of the building healthy families characteristics. So that could be things like acceptability, feasibility, and appropriateness from the family perspective, right? Because many families never hear about the local program, right? They never hear about it. So one of the mechanisms is, can we get families to hear about it? The second thing is that it improves integration between the health system in the local community and the community program team, which would increase reach as well, we think. And then it increases the ease of enrollment. Within IPARS, we would talk about that as complexity. We reduce the complexity of the process of enrollment. And so that's our mechanisms. Okay, so pretty straightforward, right? Okay, so we then also want to know, well, how effective is it? And this is one of the areas that we are studying cost. And costly would it be to do community implementation team follow-up on every text message invitation that goes out? And so we think that this actually works through a couple of different types of mechanisms. One is that it would increase the acceptability because I get contacted by a known community organization. And so I feel like that, wow, oh, this program is delivered by you guys. That makes it more acceptable to me. We think that would increase the reach. And then we have repeated opportunities for enrollment. And again, mechanisms that we would think that would work through is increased family motivation to enroll. Maybe multiple prompts helps us to think, oh, yeah, maybe I should do that, or increase my motivation to engage. Okay, so that's all this purple stuff. This is our study, right? We have randomization. You saw how we do the randomization and that kind of stuff. But this is our implementation research logic model for reach. Okay, so we start here. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. And so then the next thing that we want to think about is adoption. And of course, adoption does typically precede reach, right? Usually you have that in place. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But for adoption, this is where a lot of the communities that we worked with, even before we developed the online program package and training materials, was that they just had a really hard time finding materials. Like they were interested in delivering a program, but it was really hard to get all the program materials together. And so just for this contextual factor, we developed the online, well, as part of that, we developed the online training resource and program package that had all the materials in one place that a community would need to deliver the program. And because of that, we felt like the mechanisms would be that it would make the program perceive be perceived as more feasible, more acceptable, and more appropriate, and that we would increase community access to these materials. And by doing so, we'd increase the likelihood of adoption. Okay, the second thing that we have here is we also put together a kit of like equipment, activities, things that the folks could use within their programs. And so that was another thing, just getting all the activity materials together in one place. Again, you see that little arrow pops in there, working through the same mechanisms as our initial strategy, and moving its way to increasing adoption. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to implementation. And like, hopefully this is, maybe I'm going to just stop here. Is this helpful? Like, I'm hoping that it gives you a sense that our study is just about reach. But even though it's just about reach, we have a lot of strategies going on here. And these are strategies that we can descriptively evaluate as we're doing these projects and also contribute to the generalizable knowledge around dissemination and implementation. It's not as rigorous of information, but it sure is nice opportunities for us to build, as Heather said, well, adoption would be nice to do. Well, that could be one of the studies that we're gathering preliminary information about adoption issues that we might be able to overcome in a future study. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. And okay, so let's go on to implementation. So for implementation in this one, our primary contextual factor is that one I talked about earlier, is that there's just a variety of people and resources that changes from rural community and small town to rural community and small town, right? Some might have a Parks and Rec, some might not. Some might have cooperative extension, some might not. Some might have primary care provider, some might not. Some might have a dietitian that's at the primary care provider. Some might have a dietitian that's at the grocery store. Some might. So there's a lot of different ways. And in fact, I think when we, I don't have anything on this, but with the CORD 3.0 project, I think we ended up with something like across the 7 communities, 40 different backgrounds of people that were involved in some aspect of recruitment or implementation, and no community implementation team had the same group of people from an expertise standpoint, all different. So that's a contextual factor. Well, what did we do? This, I'm double dipping here, right? So we're back to that online resource and training package so that we can get people from a variety of backgrounds up to speed and ready to be able to teach this program. It works through a number of different factors that are primarily focused on the recipient or the person that will be delivering the intervention, increasing their capacity, their knowledge, their self-efficacy for delivery, and also likely, we would think, perceptions of feasibility, acceptability, and appropriateness. And so that, we think, would improve the fidelity of implementation of the program when it got into action. So then I'm going to jump to maintenance. This time I don't add in the new box, I just put the arrow up to it. So again, one of the things that I want to really highlight here too is that you're noticing that the contextual factors that we have here generate a number of different strategies. It's very rare in my experience that you have one context, one outcome, one strategy. It's often that the contextual factors cross over and a single strategy might be able to address 2 contextual factors or fit within those 2 contextual factors. Similarly, you might have 3 or 4 strategies that work through the same mechanism. And that mechanism may improve adoption, implementation, and maintenance. So all of this stuff, I'm trying to present it in a way because I think this is one of the easier way to communicate our projects. But knowing that what this is starting to do, and I think by the end, it demonstrates the complexity of the work that we do. But these are, again, to me, the research logic model is a great way to improve communication. And that communication can be used at the beginning of a project, during a project as you're getting results, and after the completion of a project to interpret the outcomes of that project and the processes involved with it. Okay, so here we are, the difficulty in convening community implementation teams. We also, that variety of folks, we felt like having Action Learning Collaborative in Jenny's and Kate's study, or the CORD 3.0, this was where the randomization at. In our study, every community gets both things, right? So And again, it's going to focus primarily on different mechanisms. So we have here, again, remember we're using IPARS, so facilitation is a big part of IPARS and perceptions and facilitation. But you can see the different mechanisms by which the Action Learning Collaborative could walk its way through maintenance. But of course, both of those things have influences on each, right? Like having the whole online resource means that I can do it again. I can go through things again. It's accessible, it's ongoing, it's accessibility. So that increases the likelihood of repeated cohorts, which in this study, that's how we're defining maintenance, right? Did you do one cohort? Great, you adopted and implemented. Did you do two cohorts? Great, you're now sustaining. Are you a long-term sustainer? No, but 3 cohorts? Okay, 4 cohorts. So that's how we define it here.
Walking yourself through like what's reading, what am I thinking? So is it always like written in this left to right format with the outcomes on the right, or?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm not familiar with the process that you just talked through. But the question for folks online was really around, is this, like other types of mapping approaches where you're looking for the key drivers of what the outcome is? And so the other part of the question was, is it sometimes flipped where the outcomes are on the left and other things are on the right? And I would say, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. And and there's lots of logic modeling approaches that have been out there before this one. And you'll even notice that my preferred approach is to start on the right and work my way back left. And James got some good comments here.
Yeah, I could just share, I'm doing a lot of work with the IRLM and speaking with JD. It's really depending on where are you starting and what do you already know? Do you know what outcomes you want to achieve? And you want to figure out what are my contextual factors. So you can start really where, like we often say, like start at either end, but it's really what do you already know? Oftentimes the IRLM is used to generate strategies. If you know where you want to go and you've done some work to identify contextual factors, then you can start to figure out how do we take what's going to either get in the way or help us facilitate this project, and to get to what outcomes, and then how are we going to get there? It's kind of filling in the middle, but it's really, you can use it for anything. If you know your outcomes and you want to fill in the rest, you can do that. If you know your context really well, and then you talk to them and figure out what outcomes do they care about, then you can start to prioritize, like for this case, reach.
Okay. I'm hoping people were able to pick that up on my computer as James talked through it. But it basically said it's really flexible, right? And it depends on where you're at. And you can really start pretty much anywhere within the logic model. For me, I would say that probably 80% of the projects I do, we start with re-aim. And because we know that you got to be thinking about all of these things, even if your priority is just one. The other thing I'd say is, and we're going to give you that survey that I hope everyone will complete, but is that the mechanisms column here, oftentimes when we're working with our community partners deep in these types of projects, we'll talk to them about why we think things will work, but we often don't even present the mechanism. Like, what's the context we're in? What do we want to do? And what are we going to change from an impact perspective? And then really, to me, our science comes from that mechanisms. That's where we're really contributing mostly, not that the other parts don't as well, but mostly to generalizable knowledge. And so in case anybody was wondering where the individual level re-aim outcomes from our logic model fall in, you can create logic models that would have had building healthy families right in this as one of the areas too, and we can look at mechanisms there. For us, we talk about effectiveness and maintained effect for the families as a function of high implementation quality. If communities are implementing this with high quality, we believe that effectiveness and maintenance for the families will follow.